And we're on, my friend. It's always such an honor. It sounds cliche, but every time it's such a blast. I respect you. I love you so much. There's such a love affair between the band, you, and Quebec City. So maybe for people that will not recognize your voice or your face, which I would be surprised, who the hell are you, man?
Hi, I'm Dennis from 10 Foot Pole. I'm a singer, guitarist, songwriter, and on the new record, I did most of the mixing and producing, and it's a real DIY project. And yeah, well, thanks, Eric, for having me on the show. It's really we definitely have felt a lot of the love and support from Quebec, and we really appreciate it, and we don't take it for granted. We want to get back there and see you all as soon as possible.
It's fun because every time we talk, it's because there's something new. And I think for the last almost 5 years, I think the first thing you did was the release of Setlist in 2017, if I'm right.
Yeah, yeah, we kind of took a hiatus for a while because I was really involved in my audio career. I did sound for Prince and Jimmy Eat World and AFI. I'm currently with Weird Al Yankovic, but especially the Prince time was so intense that I just had to put the band on hold for a while. There was one time when they asked me to not go to Japan, even though 10 Foot Pole had already committed to playing in Japan. And I told them right when I got hired, I'm totally available except for my band playing in Japan. So for a while, I really focused on the audio career, which has been good for me to be able to support my family. And we're finally in a position now where I've been out with Weird Al Yankovic now for 4 months straight, working every day. It's a 133 show tour, so I'm saving up money so that my family can be able to eat while 10 Foot Pole tours next year.
It's so cool because, with the pandemic and everything, it was a lot of your world taking apart. And it's a lot of stress and to get back to it, being as a huge tour, and I'm sure it's a successful tour. It seems like it's jam packed every night from what I saw, and with the movie coming, it's a good spot. And you can still work with 10 football because there's a new record. So was the pandemic fast up a little bit of making the new record creatively and recording it, or was it something it was already planned, so everything was scheduled as normal?
Well, I wouldn't say scheduled as normal because we did plan on doing touring, and especially I was going to do an acoustic house party tour even during the pandemic that just had to be pushed and eventually put on hold for a while. Um, the the pandemic was so big, it just kind of made everything else in my life kind of stop and just restructure what to do. And but my response to it was, okay, I'm going to be home for a long time. I can't work because all my work involves people getting together. So for the first year or so, I basically lived off government subsidies, and instead of just studying my trade, like studying the live sound work that I already do, it was too depressing to do that, not knowing if I was going to have a job in 2 or 3 years, and also like especially learning boring things about computers. It's very hard to be motivated when you know you're not going to use it for a long time because you'll forget it. So instead, I focused on making the 10 Foot Pole acoustic record, Simmer Down, and I made it myself, and so that was my way of keeping part of my brain involved with audio. So I was still listening to audio and working with plugins, working with the same tools that I use live, but getting something made from it, like a portfolio of songs that has always been kind of not always, but lately has been part of my dream, is having like the ability to do acoustic shows and rock shows and mix it up because I get bored doing one thing. And so creating a whole album, that Simmer Down record, um, was to me a worthy goal. Like I spent 10 or 12 hours a day sometimes at home just working on that record, and that gave me a solid goal to get through the pandemic and not be just depressed, doing nothing. Um, one danger of that is that like it can be real, it can be habit forming to just be a hermit. And eventually I got some work where I was working locally and getting out. And I think that was really good for me to start being social. Because otherwise it's kind of like, you just like, okay, this is my life, is being alone, and I don't want to see or talk to any humans. But by by working a bit locally in Boise, Idaho, I was able to kind of get my foot back into being social. And then once the acoustic record was done, I got kind of bored with acoustic guitar and started playing electric guitar. And the songs in the new, so the new 10-foot pole record is called Winning, and it's a bit of an ironic title. The cover has two fighters just beating each other up, and those songs, most of those songs came from me just playing with an acoustic guitar and singing, and during the pandemic, just by myself, and writing lyrics, and just having fun with it, and trying to write good songs, which is what I always do. But I think things are developing a little more too, where I'd like to think the art is getting better, not worse, over the years.
No, you do, because you always challenge yourself, and I think that's the whole point with that project, growing up as an artist, and you try a lot of things, which has respect a lot, I'm sure that there's records in the discography that you said, we went to that direction, we took risk, but at the end, it bring another records that is better, and it's that each time. So, and I really love, like, Escalating. It was really interesting records because you try a lot. And I really love the records. I told you that. And I'm sure you correct some mistake you think you did on the records, because I don't agree with every mistake, because I love the whole thing. But what's the main difference? What was the approach with the new record compare of Escalating, which was the first brand new record since like 2004, I think, something like that.
Yeah, Escalating Quickly was all new songs, and my songwriting process was pretty much the same as before. I think one of the main differences was I was working with Ryan Green, and he was kind of excited about trying new things, and and also I liked the idea of bringing in kind of these shredding guitar players like Dan Palmer, and and uh, and it was really fun to. Yeah, so I have always liked bands like Thin Lizzy, who have like two guitars dueling, and like I just thought it'd be really fun to take my songs, but to have some other musicians just have fun with it. And so we got Joe from Lagwagon to play bass, but with Ryan Green's direction, to do things that were more experimental than in the past, kind of 10-foot pole as a band would have been. And part of that was at the time when we decided to make Escalating Quickly, I didn't have a solid drummer. We were kind of switching drummers a lot, and so I talked with Ryan about it, and he suggested Sean from Good Riddance, and he's just amazing. And so because Sean and Ryan had worked together, they were able to do recording like really quickly and really efficiently. And so so some of Escalating Quickly was kind of letting Ryan have fun with it. Like he put some keyboards on it and stuff. And I didn't want to censor his ideas. I wanted to be like, let's run free with some ideas, because I don't want a dozen 10-foot pole albums that all just sound like Dennis Jagard's style of playing guitar. And so I've always tried to get our band members to write different music. And you'll see on Winning, Scott Hallquist, he wrote 3 of the songs in there, and you could tell everything's different about the guitar. Like the guitar tone itself, Take Back Your Voice is the one that's been released so far. But just even the guitar tone itself, like he recorded all those guitars, and they're just kind of more shreddy, more metal sounding. And whereas the ones where I did the rhythm guitars sound kind of more typical of the old 90s 10-foot pole sound, like a little less shreddy. I mean, they're still distorted, but they're not quite as like modern metal sounding as Scott's. And that's really just a subjective thing where I like that sound. I got the sound I wanted, and I wrote the song and thought that's the sound it should have. And and um and I liked that Scott brought something different to the table, and I liked that Ryan Green brought something different to the table too, and with Dan from Atreyu, and and Dan Palmer, and all those different sounds. I thought it was fun, but that said, we did get a lot of backlash from from fans who were mad that we didn't make another 90s sounding like all fast song album. And I think winning is kind of a chance. It was both a chance to go back to a little more of the 90s straightforward sound, but also part of the reason we did that was because I was the producer, and that's what I know and that's what I like. And rather than depending on other people to play guitar solos, like on my songs, on most of them, I mean, it's usually me or Scott, and on a lot of them, it's just me. You can tell it's a Dennis guitar solo if it's really simple. Like I like one note, little like melodic things that I'm just trying to make a little melody that people sing in their heads. And I'm not a shredder by any stretch of the imagination. And but I don't necessarily want every guitar solo to be a shreddy guitar. I kind of like when it's just, a few notes that stick in your head. And
Yeah.
and Scott joined in a lot of my songs and did a lot of other interesting things. There's some songs that you haven't heard yet, I presume, unless you've heard the whole record, that are like really different, and I'm so excited for people to hear it. Um, but that said, a lot of the ones, especially the ones we led with, are kind of a back to the 90s roots. A lot of the songs have a halftime bridge, and that I think I wasn't thinking about it intentionally, but basically Scared Straight in the 80s hardcore, I loved the times when we'd be super fast, but then we'd go to this halftime breakdown in the bridge, and people would just go nuts in the pit. And I really liked that vibe. So a lot of the songs, especially my songs on this record, have a halftime like bridge that is, right from the 80s hardcore Scared Straight and hardcore roots.
And it's funny because the first 10 football records will was released as Care. And one of my friend got a copy, and I was like, you kidding me? Like I thought they corrected like first print like 10 football.
Yeah, I mean, Scared Straight was 10 Foot Pole. It wasn't like it was a new band. We literally just changed the name. Um, we were about to go to Europe, and Fat Mike convinced us that, like right before we went to our first trip to Europe, Fat Mike was like, you know what, everybody thinks you're a straight edge band. You ought to just change your name. And then, going out there with a new record, we thought, well, if we're going to go to Europe, we probably should change our name before we do it, so that people know if we do build a good reputation, it's with this new name, not some name that we're about to leave behind. And I didn't really think that much about Scared Straight, but I'm really glad we did change the name, because now there's a lot of weird connotations with Scared Straight anyway.
Yeah.
It sounds like a weird gender orientation thing or something. So I'm glad we
Yeah.
changed it. I mean, 10 Foot Pole's a little goofy sounding, but we were kind of goofy. We were a somewhat goofy band. We weren't funny like No Effects, but we weren't like angry. Like Scared Straight sounds kind of like, I don't know, too serious. But yeah,
I'm
Scared
not
was.
surprised that to say about it and try to change the name. It's the personage that we are, but it's a good thing. You're right. Like after all, when we think about it, Scare Straight is a good name, but then football is, I don't know, it catch people remember it.
Yeah, I think 10 Foot Pole was more fitting for what we were. I mean, everything's a compromise, and who knows what could have been or should have been. But at the time we were about to at the time we were going to Europe. Actually, we had already printed a whole bunch of discs, a whole bunch of CDs and cassettes that said Scared Straight. And so when we went to Europe, we started by putting a sticker over it that said 10 Foot Pole, and then taking a Sharpie and crossing out the places that. So we like basically opened all the CDs and cassettes, and we were like scratching out the Scared Straight. I think we had about 3,000 copies on the first print, and some of them went out as Scared Straight, and then some of them we changed to 10 Foot Pole. But it literally was the same band. And of course, we had band members change pretty quickly after that, but that wasn't intentional either. It was just happened to be that, we had a drummer that didn't want to practice, and the guys in the band wanted a drummer that liked to practice. And so we got a new drummer, like those kind of situations. And And that's happened in the whole history of the band, Scared Straight and 10-Foot Pole. Like, we've had a lot of changes, and how else could you? I mean, we started 40 years ago, so having a few different band members here and then there is, I think, to be expected. And we're unless you're really successful, like Weird Al Yankovic, it's pretty unusual to have the same band members for 40 years.
It's true. It's pretty rare in the punk rock. I think of there's Melancholine that are still the same member, but there's really a few bands. Yeah, I went to see Pearl Jam. They changed drummer over the course of times. They had the main core, but still, it's not like the original lineup. It's pretty rare. It's tough. It's a
Yeah.
family thing.
And
We
that's even
started
with
up.
a band that makes millions of dollars. So if you're in a band that makes no money or loses money, it's especially not likely that you could keep going. So, that's the thing. There's a lot of reasons why someone would leave the band or get kicked out of the band. But the most common thing is just, you have other opportunities in life that you would rather do than be in do something where you put in a lot of work and don't make any money. And in our world, there's not much support for that to happen. So um, that's basically like the summary of like I'm I was in the original group and started it, and for whatever reason, instead of joining some other band or doing something different, I just kept going, and with different members and different band names and labels and whatever it took. I haven't given up writing music yet, and I'd like to think it's getting better. I mean, I think with the winning record, um, like it's definitely not worse. I don't think, than previous records as a whole. Like as a whole album, I think winning's pretty strong. So I'm pretty excited about it.
I just heard like the 4 song you released as a kind of digital EP. And I was confused at first. I thought it was just 4 songs, maybe leftover, but I heard.
Yeah, no, it's a 13 song brand new album, and so yeah, and there's a bit of a variety in it. Out of the 13 songs, um, there's some there's a couple that are slower, and there's a couple that are a little different sounding. Like one is kind of more almost like Descendants, I would say, like kind of fast and poppy, or Ramones Descendants. And like a couple are kind of heavier and slower and trippy. Um, but I'm excited. I didn't know if you had heard it all. Like if you got like a preview as a member of the press elite, as a media um, influencer, or whatever you want to call what you do. I didn't know if the label gave you a listen to it, but I'm excited that I hope you like it, and excited that you get to hear it.
I didn't heard the whole records. I'm sure if I would ask to Anthony, but in a way, like I hear the 4 song, but normally like I love you guys so much that I would wait to hear the whole thing. So maybe send me the whole link to listen to the whole record, but I don't want just to listen to a couple of songs. I want to know the whole thing from the first songs to the last, because it's always been an experience listening to you, and that's what I love. You were asking if the band is getting better. It is, because you're a good songwriter, but I don't think it maybe was natural in you. Like there's a lot of songwriters, they write songs in 50 minutes, they make huge hits, and they just don't know. It's in their blood. But I think you work your songwriting, and that's where we see the evolutions of the songs getting more deeply, the subjects years later is still accurate. So in a way, yeah, totally. I think so. For a fan's point of view, yeah, we see the evolution really, but not that it was not like it was goofy back in the days, but still it's changed a lot since if we compare to maybe Insider. But Unleashed was so well written, it was crazy.
Oh, great. Yeah, I don't know. Like I just do my best and keep going, and I think that I've found like melodies and things that kind of feel good for my voice, that might make the songs in some ways, at least for me singing it, feel more powerful than some of the old ones. But I don't know, and and this approach, so this record winning was my first record, my first rock record as the mixer and producer. And I was pretty excited about that, being able to have that level of kind of control of deciding with the guys how the arrangements should go. In the past, we always had a producer who might kind of, oh, well, let's cut this part or move this part over there. And sometimes I would agree with them and sometimes I wouldn't. But, you know, you don't want to argue too much with the producer because maybe they're right, you know. And in this case, I just stepped forward and said, okay, other than so Scott kind of produced 2 songs and I produced the other 11. And you know, it is like art in the sense that I could have had a choice of how did I want it. And so if it's great, it's because of the contributions of the writers and I didn't screw it up. And if it sucks, there's always that question of like, oh, if I just would have done this or that or the other thing, maybe a different producer would have done it differently. And but also that process was fun and exciting. It was great to have that control. And it was good for my ear and me to try to mix in a way that not just making it sound good in while I'm hearing it, which is what I do in a live concert, but also make it sound good on different kinds of speakers is a big challenge. Like the recording process, and like it needs to sound good on headphones and on a big sound system and on little speakers. And so trying to find a compromise in what in having the mix always sound good was challenging and fun. And I'm glad that at least most people like it. There's always a few people who are writing in like, oh, I don't like this about the drum sound, or this I would have changed this, or da 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 da. It's like, but even when Ryan Green was making the record, like one of the first comments was like, oh, those drums sound fake, and it was like, but I know Sean Sellers played those drums. It's not fake, you know. But and sometimes I wonder if the people saying that actually would prefer to hear fake drums, because maybe what they don't like about the mix is something to do with like the cymbals getting into the tom mics, or other things that had to do with it being real drums, as opposed to if it was like really like drum samples. But so all that stuff's kind of interesting and fun, and I'm excited to be part of it, and that people even care, even when people like have a complaint about it. I'm just excited that people care enough to write in and share their opinion. The worst thing is if nobody cares.
Yeah. Yeah, talk good, talk bad, but still, and that's the thing. That's the tricky thing now. Like everybody has an opinion on everything. So a lot of people are complaining, but they never do a record. They never went in studio. They don't have a band. So it's not like back in the days where there was no internet and you got that review from, I don't know, a zine or a journal from New York saying, okay, 10 football is not that good, and that's it. You never heard about that. And people, like back in the days, you have to go face to face if you want to, complaining about something you don't like. And most of people don't do that when they're face to face. But behind a keyboard, they do a lot. And that's why it must be tough for somebody who read a lot of review about what they're doing and just thinking like, okay, oh, that guy didn't like it, I change everything. But I don't know a thing about it.
Yeah, I mean it can be hard as an artist to put yourself out there and not take it personally when people don't like what you do. Like look at Linkin Park. The singer of Linkin Park was basically, at least that's my understanding, is that he was really bummed out because people hated his new record. And uh it is, there's part of me that takes it personally, but then there's part of me that's just kind of, I just don't know. Like just say somebody says, "Oh, I don't like this certain sound of the drums or whatever." Um, I'm kind of curious, if they're a sound engineer and they made something that they think sounds good, would I go like, "Wow, that is really how drums should sound," or would I listen to it and go like, "Wow, that's awful." I don't care what this person thinks about the drum sound because I don't agree with them. Like some people want your band to sound like a garage band, and I don't want to sound like a garage band. I want to sound like a great sounding record. For example, that sometimes like what's considered a natural drum sound to me sounds like standing in a garage listening to drums, and I don't like that sound. Like I want it to sound like Rammstein or something, you know, like just I want it to sound epic and big and fun. I want that snare to just kick you in the chest, and the kick drum to be like just driving and be no question about like, you know, this is rocking. But anyway, that's just me, and it could be that other people are right, and you know, this is my first record, and maybe I'll learn something different on the next one.
Yeah, yeah. And a good example is the Misfits. You know, the Glenn Danzig era was really bad recording, but the songs would jam, and that's why they stood the time. You know, they passed through times, but
Yeah,
still, I'm sure they're disappointed in their recording. If they had record that with a good sounding now, I'm sure they were more solid masterpiece than, you know, and we listened to that and we still love it, but on vinyl, it's sometimes it's really pretty awful.
yeah. But then somehow I don't know whether it was just luck or whether they were brilliant, but that that graphic is the best selling T-shirt ever. Like people who don't even know who Misfits are have that uh, smiling skull on their shirt, and I don't know if it's true, but I heard that that was like the best selling thing ever, like the best selling image like of all time was the Misfits thing. So, you know, maybe they made a crappy sounding song, but they had the coolest looking shirt, and now they're still huge. But I agree, like a lot of their songs, it sounded kind of like Elvis meets the Ramones, and
Yeah.
it was a good combination. There was like a lot of melody that even today, some of the lyrics are silly, but you can sing along with it. And so I enjoy it still once in a while, and regardless of the other goofy things that you know they may have done, and that's, I mean, looking back, like, I don't think any of us expected it to take it too seriously. I mean, there were some people who knew obviously that it could be that things could be successful, but for the most part, and our background was just kind of like we were kids and we were doing it ourselves, and we just wanted to make something that other people would enjoy and mosh around in the pit to and sing along. Not get too serious about the sound of this snare is, you know, your snare is too loud or not loud enough, or I don't know whatever, you know, what other kind of things would be. But at least
But
nowadays, like you're right, that we can, at least if someone complains, I could put a link right to it so that someone else reading that complaint can go, oh, I wonder what they're talking about. I'm going to hear it right now. And maybe they'll disagree, and maybe they'll like the song, even though they may agree even with the complaint, but it's another way that they might hear the song and maybe they wouldn't have otherwise heard it.
yeah, yeah. And the thing is, with time, you know what you want and you know what you don't want. And I think that's the main thing, that back in the days when you rush yourself doing something because you want to people already like, okay, I want to do something now. I want people to recognize the band and we want to tour and everything has to be fast. And then you look at it and whoa, we went like it was too much, 2 days in the studio. And now you can take time and everything has changed. So I think it's just growing up, you know, as an artist and as a human being. Like you know what you want, and sometimes you went to direction that you hate, and you know that I don't want that anymore. So you know, you have more the records that you dream of when you started up than back in the days that you are trying to get that sound, trying to, you know, do something that you love. And I'm sure that new records, you feel like it's the kind of masterpiece that you were waiting all these years, you know. And from what I heard, it's the record everybody was kind of expecting since many years. It's heavy, it's fast, it's punk rock, but there's still a lot of melody. There's slow down part that really works. So you know, at the end, I think it's gonna be well balanced.
I hope so. I hope people like it when they hear the whole thing, and I'm excited to hear. You know, I love playing too, so hopefully people will share it and tell their friends about it if they like it, because it really comes down to our ability to tour, to play locally, depends on whether promoters think they're going to sell enough tickets to put on a show. So so sharing it and letting other people know if you like a band is the best way to build it to a point where we could actually afford to come to the town. So knock on wood, you know, we'll do everything we can to try to be able to do it. And that's why I'm working so hard right now to try to save money, because touring is so risky and I have a family to feed, that before I can really go on a tour like that again, I need to be sure that I have money in the bank for our bills to be paid, so that if we just totally lose our asses on the tour, there's my family's not starving or struggling too hard.
The good news is the pandemic make us realize how much, music is therapy. So the show are sold out, it's jam packed, people singing their voice. It's so overwhelming to see that, and there's people in their 40s, 50s that just giving everything, and every shows are crazy. I attempt to a lot that summer. So yeah, I think it's gonna be a great timing, and I know next year is gonna be a huge year because we kind of lost like the 3 4 months, the first 3 4 months, sorry, of this year's with the pandemic. So like, and there was a lot of artists that choose to go in Europe, so they're coming our way next year. So I think it's gonna be huge years and a great timing if it's possible for you because yeah, the thing is, there's always, like I said, a lot of fans in Quebec, but now people just like they want to have fun. They don't really care. It's a local band. It's a band from outside, and a lot of kids coming to show now because like those one who got like the kid that were 17 when the pandemic hit now are 19, and they're their parent telling those crazy punk rock story. So they're curious and they're coming to shows. They went to
Oh,
cruise.
great.
I saw them to show like they're young and they're in 20s, and it's so cool.
Oh, nice. Well, I hope everyone still feels that way next year, and we'll try to go around. I mean, for me, we'll just do our best with wherever some people will put us up, um, and I'll still try to do my little acoustic thing too, just because I like things to be different. And some people prefer the acoustic, so it's kind of fun for me to. Sometimes I do too. It's fun for me to change and do the songs in a different way when it's time for acoustic. So knock on wood. Hopefully, hopefully it'll all line up and things will be okay, and people will feel safe and comfortable going out and rocking, like you said. We'll just get through this winter and see what happens next year.
Just that's the crazy thing. Like you saw World Al Yang every shows, but then football hasn't performed since the COVID.
We haven't. But one cool thing about working as much as I have is I've also taken money from my work and put it into advertising, because I feel like this album is so good that if we just get people to listen to it, um, that it'll build the fan base too. So in the past we've had mixed success with different things with the press and everything, and but this time I by working 7 days a week for 6 months, I have a bit of a budget to where I'm just like, let's advertise. Why not? Let's like treat it like a real business and go out. So with all of that's just the goal of getting new people to take a listen, or even old people who gave up for whatever reason. Oh, they're not good anymore, or whatever other thing they heard, to get them to give the song a listen. And I'm betting all that advertising money that if people listen, we'll get a lot of new fans.
It's a totally different style of music, but the proof is the new Megadeth records. Everybody's talking about it. I listened to it twice, and there's a lot of nostalgia. There's new stuff. There's cover. They did the Dead Kennedys cover. They did Police Truck, and they did a Sammy Hagar cover, and it's working. And everybody's talking about that. And like the two last record for Megadeth, there was cool, but he kind of lost the creativity behind that. But now he's getting back to it. So I think that the COVID, everybody's taking a step up, from what they were doing. Is just like it gets everything better. Like I said, we now know what we want, and we know it can happen again. So I think everybody was driven by something. And then most of the band that took their time and create something, it's more good than ever because they had time, like what
Yeah.
we don't do normally in that crazy society.
Yeah, and time makes a big difference, and it's especially like if you're touring all the time, you're too busy to be creative, the music's going to suffer. And on this record, I definitely, no one was telling me hurry up, or there wasn't any. It was just kind of like, I'm going to keep songwriting until I'm sure we've got a good 12 songs or so that's worth making a record. And it was. And also by doing it myself, I had the time to say, if my mixes don't sound good, if I'm not satisfied with where it's going, like, we'll hire someone else to do it. And but at the end of the day, maybe someone else could have made it sound better. I'm sure someone could have made it sound a little better, but the things that I got to do because I was in there doing it in terms of creative control might make it worth a slight downgrade in sound quality, because I was able to arrange it and do the things and change the things that I didn't like, or change the songs. Oh, let's make that intro shorter. Let's make this longer. Let's add this new part. And if someone else is doing that, that's a whole different conversation, a whole different level of freedom. So I think I was willing to take a risk on the quality, on the audio quality a little bit, to have that control. And of course, if I wasn't proud of it, I wouldn't have released it. I would have just kept mixing it till it was good. And I felt like it sounded really good to me. So I hope other people like it.
As long as you don't do like Guns, like 17 years of just remixing it. I'm gonna have it. No, I'm like, and at the end, I'm sure you're way more proud, because like it's like a lot of achievement, like the writing, lyrically, and singing, and then like produce it, mix it, and like do everything. It's really DIY, but in a professional way. So you take like everything you learn from being a sound man and get into the studio and try thing, so it's really cool, and you develop yourself as a producer. And then maybe one day with your old days, you're gonna tape like young bands, like trying to take over the world, just like
Yeah.
sharing grace, learning.
Yeah. And I'm not giving up on the idea that we could work with a producer on another record. For one thing, someone who's more experienced will get things done a lot quicker, because they're just fast at what they do. But so just it kind of depends on the timing. If I'm stuck for a year at home with the pandemic, I might as well do it. And also, I had a job in Idaho. I took a local job where I only work about 20 hours a week, so I had a lot of time to work on things besides that job. And who knows what the future holds, whether I'll have that kind of time, or whether I'll just want to put all my time into songwriting, but then work with a producer on the recording to make the recording part of it faster. We'll see, but I'm pretty excited about. Probably the next thing I'll do is an acoustic record again, anyway, just because now that we made a rock record, it's time. I think like, for one thing, on an acoustic record, at least a third of it is just old. Well, probably more than half of it will be songs that are already written, so it has much less kind of pressure and preparation time, because I figure about a third of it would be like kind of classic 10-foot pole songs, and then a third of it would be like recent songs, like from this record. I already, like It's Always Been You. I think I have to do that acoustic, because it's just so fun to sing when I play with acoustic guitar on the street. I love doing it. Like, there's so many parts where the vocal's just singing loudly on its own. It's just fun acoustically, for example. And then another third, probably new songs, like, write 4 or 5 brand new songs that we're real proud of. But that could be done a lot quicker than writing a whole, rock record. So that's probably what I'll do over this next winter, while I'm preparing and trying to get 10-foot pole on tour for next year.
Wow. Wow, it's so cool. You like Maiden. You have the plan like for the next 5 years of 10 football. Like,
Well, the main thing is I like to switch it up. So it's like, we just did a rock record, let's do acoustic, for a while. And but I still want to tour both. So we'll see what happens with the scheduling. But there's kind of no reason not to, because I might as well go out and play acoustic shows, once the pandemic clears enough to where I can do it without any big issues to cross borders and stuff. I love the idea of just going around and playing in people's backyards or whatever, playing acoustic guitar, low pressure, short drives, whether it's in, Canada or the US or Europe. There's something fun about doing that that's different. But I'm really excited too about getting the whole band together and rehearsing for a while. I want to rehearse the band for like 3 weeks in Quebec. So during that 3 weeks, I might as well be playing acoustic shows, right? I think so, because I haven't been with the guys through the whole pandemic. So I don't want to I don't want to do a little bit of rehearsing and then go play at a festival. Like I want to be solid.
And nobody in the band has stopped. Everybody worked their ass, and Guillaume did a solid jobs, like with his video, like taking like he did a lot of cover, and he joined some projects. So always keeping drumming, and it's so cool. It's a beautiful lineup, and it's gonna be great because I always said, like, when it takes time, it's always better. So
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure when you're gonna get together live, it's gonna be crazy, like almost like the first time you did a gig. And do you remember the first time you played with Scare Straight, like the first gig of Scare Straight?
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, I remember the first times we played ever. Like, it wasn't even called Scared Straight at first. It was different names, but yeah, like when we were kids, like before I could even drive, we played at our junior high school for lunchtime one day. And we also played another one of our first gigs was it was at a roller rink, and it was a battle of the bands. And there were 4 bands, one set up in each corner of the rectangle rink, and we won the first week. And there were these other bands of these guys that were like, I can't remember if it was a metal band. I think it was a metal band, and they were really mad, like, you let those little kids win, like, because they felt like it just like the judges weren't fair, because clearly they were better musicians than us, but we had a lot of energy and a lot of kids came out to see us. And of course my dad had a sound company, so we had these little wood stages, like it was a show. We had a sound system and lights and stage, and like we weren't very good musically, but we were very aggressive, and kids loved it. And so so we won the first week. It was funny. But yeah, it was
And the metal band
exciting.
becomes later after that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like I used to, like, they ask me a lot to do like judging those contests, and I host a couple of one, and I've never felt comfortable like judging them because I'm not a musician, and so I'm more like giving, like, not advice, but like just have fun, and just like, meet new people, and that's it. Just take the stage and make it your own. Like, that's the only thing you can do. I will not judge you technically, but that's what I love from the show, and what I enjoy, and what I didn't like, or where you lost my attention some way. That's the only thing I can do. And then it's always weird contests where there's like cover bands, and then band that write their own songs, and it's just like it's a mix. Like, you are,
Yeah.
what the hell are we doing here?
Yeah. And I remember some of our other first shows were places like at the Cafe de Grand in Hollywood, was like a famous punk club. And one of our
Yeah.
biggest shows, there was a riot outside, like riot police and everything. And so the Cafe de Grand let everyone in for free. So there were like 500 or 600 people in the basement of this punk club. And it was just awesome. And I remember, like, one of the things I remember is like after every show, I usually was kind of like mad about not performing better, which is kind of silly, but it's how I kind of felt. Like, we need to practice harder and get tighter. We need to be better. And then later, when I was going to college, I talked to somebody like who was an older person, and she was like, "Oh yeah, we used to love you guys because you were like these little kids who like came in. You're all jumping around with all this energy, and you weren't even 21 yet or whatever, and you were at a punk rock club in Hollywood playing, and I guess we were 15. I guess we were about 15, 16. Like we were in. It was my first. Yeah, I would have been in 10th grade, I think, when we were playing in Hollywood, and so I would have been, yeah, like 14 and 15. And it was
That's
pretty, it was just this silly thing. Like, I was taking the music all seriously, but people didn't like our band because we took the music seriously. They liked us because we were like these little kids who were like jumping up and down and playing fast music, and you know halftime bridges and just mosh pits and everything. But yeah, I do feel like that like now the people in the band, like each one of those guys, Richie on bass and Scott on guitar, like and Guillaume on drums, like each one uh, of them has like such a strong background in what they're doing, that I feel like we can just go out and play and not have to worry about kind of the ability to do it. Now it's just about like having fun and doing a good, just being present there and enjoying it. And
You don't have to
yeah,
worry to be like Motley Crue, like
yeah,
are being like overweight and not tight at all and selling like high price ticket and people like ripping you off on the internet after that. Like, what the hell? And that's the beauty of it. I think that,
yeah,
that kid that you are challenging yourself, yourself back in the days, just trying to get better and not like going to the path of destroying yourself with, drugs and liquor and everything. Now, it pay because, when football, it's true. It's everybody knows it's gonna be tight, and it's not every band. NoFX. The last time I saw them, it was so cool. They finally got the whole together, and it was so tight. I'm surprised that they're leaving because they never have been that tight. And it's cool to see that because they get this shit together. And for many years, I was seeing them, and it was really mediocre. Like, it was fun. It's no effects. It's part of the deal. But now it's cool to see. So if you do it seriously in a way and having fun, I don't mean like being too serious about yourself, but just like make the right choice. At the end, even after you're 60 or 70s, it's still decent. You can do that drive forever. I mean, like, look at Iron Maiden. They're still like at their peak, like,
yeah,
but they didn't choose like that path that where you're 50, you look like you're 80s.
yeah. But there's part of me also that doesn't want all the pressure of like trying to perform at that level, and that's one reason I like doing little acoustic house party shows. Is I don't have to worry about like especially on the rock step or whatever. Like if my voice isn't quite up to par, like if my voice is tired from not getting enough sleep or getting too much smoke or whatever, and I can't hit my high notes. That's one cool thing about just doing an acoustic show to 50 people, like at Vince's house or something, and just be like, just having a good time and telling stories and enjoying it, and not, it's a different level of pressure than if you're at a festival in front of thousands of people. And I like both, but I like to change it. So like, okay, pressure, let's just relax and just like enjoy playing the songs and appreciate having like people who care about the music. Um, but anyway, yeah, I'm excited about it. I'm hoping, like you said, that people like this record, and that the word gets out, and that we could do both and play some big shows and some little shows and backyard acoustic parties or little, the first acoustic tour really was in Quebec, and it went great. So I have no doubt that we could do it and have like little fun, intimate gatherings of telling stories and playing songs, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, yeah. I think that you play like before the festival that day of Quebec. We say each other. You play like somewhere like 12 p.m. and then you had the huge show later. And I was like, wow, man, I would be so nervous. I could perform during the day. And you were like, no, it's warming up, and it's more calm, and it calmed me down. And I'm like, wow.
Well, it's true that like singing sometimes, especially if I sing hard, it's kind of like athletic thing. Like your voice afterwards kind of swells up. It's kind of like if you do something like play, some kind of sport where you get all tired, then your things swell up. And so I don't generally, I don't know, I don't generally like to do a matinee show, but I can't remember. I guess FEQ maybe was that same day. We had or maybe it was the day before. I don't remember now, but yeah, having like a noon performance, it's always exciting and different, and depending how hard I sing, whether or not I'll be able to talk later in the day or the next day, even like if I really go off the wall too much, like how much distortion and how much I push um, can affect it. And sometimes you don't know until later that you overdid it, Oops, I shouldn't have sang that hard. But
you get catch in the moment, and it's tough like to balance that when you're on stage. There people throwing up so much energy, and you give, and then you realize like, oops, I have a show tomorrow, and I really give it all on that track, and like to
yeah.
reach that high note. And but at the end, it's like I said, it's challenging yourself, and it's really beautiful to see that, after all those years, and see a lot of musicians that still have that fire. That's
Mhm.
that's what impressed me at that point of the scene. Some of us are just reached the 40s, and some of their 50s and 60s, and still performing and just enjoy it, like the way it's their first time, and it's crazy, man. We're such lucky, to have that.
Yeah. Yeah. For whatever reason, I've kept doing it, and I still want to do it, and I love it. When it's going, as long as as long as my family isn't suffering too much for me to be there. I want to do it, and I love it, and have like a little thing. Um, oh, I should plug our website, 10footpole.com, in case anybody wants to hear the songs. Of course, there's a lot of places you can hear them, like on Eric's radio show. But if you want to hear more, or to contact us, I currently handle everything like Instagram and Facebook and everything. So TEN, 10footpole.com, is kind of a central place to hear news and find links to music and all the social media. And I like to keep in touch with people too, and especially if people want to host an acoustic house party. So I'm compiling lists, like people from all over the
Yeah.
area. If people say, "Hey, that sounds fun," I keep that contact information. Then when I'm ready to do it, I've got a whole list of people all over the world. Be like, or sometimes like I'm on tour, like well, on this tour, I because of COVID protocols, I had to cancel show plans. But in general, like usually when I'm on tour traveling, there will be a day off, and it's just random, in what city that day off is. So ahead of the tour, I'll just look and go, oh, look, I'm going to be in, Jacksonville, Florida on this certain date. And then I'll look at my list. And if there's somebody there, I'll reach out and say, hey, do you mind if I show up at your house and play some acoustic songs, on whatever it is, October 9th. But
But it's such like I love the idea. It's like background party. We never really had that here in Quebec. Like in California, that was the thing in the 80s and early 90s, like the pool, skating, and then like a party with a band. But like having like those moments, and it's such magical every time. Like seeing like the eyes of people, and they know they can like, okay, I can talk to him after the show, because when it's like more venues and everything, people are more shy and they don't want to bother. But now you're in the house, you have to, you have to step just in front of me if you pass, so you can say hi and share your emotion about it and everything. And like I always said, like musicians sometimes it's just 5 minutes of their time, but it changes a lot of people. But those show they remember for the rest of their life because they're unique.
yeah, yeah. And they're unique for me too. And I enjoy that contact. And I feel like I hope I'm right, but I feel like, some, they always say don't meet your idols because they're going to be jerks. And, but I feel like some musicians, if you meet them, you're going to like them less. But I'd like to think that I'm someone that if people meet me, they'll like me more. And I don't know if I'm right about that, but I think I'm pretty right that going around and playing at people's houses and stuff, I'm generally not a dick. And so at the end of it, usually people are like, yeah, that guy was okay. I'll check out his music. And I hope I'm right about that, because that was kind of part of my strategy of like, meeting people and building support for the band by performing and talking and being open to people, rather than like kind of hiding backstage and being afraid to talk to people. And you mentioned parties in LA. There were a lot of parties, but there were also a lot of the police broke up a lot of parties. It was a challenging time, and it was really silly because they used to break up the party and then make everyone drive home. They'd be like, "Everyone, get out of here!" And you would think that you'd think instead they'd be like, okay, there's a lot of underage drinking, so we're going to break up the party, but we're going to make you stay here until you're sober. But instead, they were just like, the police would come in and they'd be like, get out of here, and they'd be really mean, like, you gotta go, da, da, da. The neighbors complain, gotta break this up right now, get out of here. And then there'd be all these people driving in the streets, like a big the streets would be flooded with cars of teenagers driving away from
Yeah.
a party where there was all this beer. Like horribly irresponsible, to just like for law enforcement to send these drunk kids out to drive. But that's a lot of my memories of it. There weren't that many parties that were kind of more realistic, like Anthony's parties. Like, he invites all his neighbors and it's like acoustic in the backyard. Whereas Los Angeles parties were like, we set the band up in the backyard and people make a lot of noise, and sometimes the police come within 20 minutes and it's over.
Yeah, Anthony, when the police came, is just to say that, okay, cool, like, we're gonna be there next time.
Oh, really? The police did come?
Yeah, one time, but it was okay. The
Oh, good.
like Anthony is, he warm everybody. The town know about that, and he's like, when it's well done, and you got the agreement of everybody. But it's so cool. It's just like you said, it's special, and this year was amazing too. But I'm sure you're gonna at some point, one time, you're gonna do a house party. The neighbor's gonna call the cops. And the neighbor's gonna come and say, "Oh my God, it's Dennis from 10 Football. I'm a fan. I'm so sorry."
I I doubt that. Well, especially if it's acoustic. I mean, maybe they'll call the police if it's in the backyard and too loud. I don't know. I mean, who knows what'll happen? I can't make any promises. But yeah, back when we were kids, it was more like, oh, my parents are out of town for the weekend. I'm going to throw a rager in the backyard, and they charge money to get in the door, and people would start drinking beer. And then the minute the band would start, the police would break up the party. But the people throwing the party would keep the money and be like, okay, now we made rent money or whatever. And it was, it was like 15-year-old kids pulling a party scam essentially. So who knows? It's a lot different when it's, Anthony and he invited all his neighbors, and he's pretty respectful about it.
We're like, LA was really violent at some point, but Quebec is kind of more way quiet. It's
I hope
of
so.
course
Yeah.
we don't really have that.
Yeah, I hope so, because I mean, obviously there are like kind of weird security things about offering to play at people's houses. So, I hope the people are nice, or at least not mean. And but there definitely are risks, but I'm gonna forge ahead and just try to be careful and make my way across. I mean, the main thing is I bought this van, and uh, I want to make sure that I feel like it wasn't a waste of money. Even if I don't get the band to tour in it, I want to drive that thing across Canada a couple more times and play some acoustic shows, play the band shows, because I don't want people to think, wow, that guy spent a whole bunch of money on a van and he doesn't even use it.
He's a poser. He buy a van just to have a van.
Yeah. Well, I just hate being wrong. I bought this van. It was an investment, you know, but anyway.
And last time we spoke, you were trying on, you were fixing it and change something for the bed and everything.
Yeah. Cause I bought just a big cargo van and then welded in beds and stuff and carved in windows. And at the time that I bought it, I was doing really well. I had these big jobs. And then, so I thought I needed an investment to help with my taxes. So as a business owner, if you buy something big like a van, that gets subtracted from the money that you get taxed on from your income.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, for a few years after I bought the van, my income was drastically lower, so I didn't need anything to subtract off it. But anyway, but I've worked really hard and paid it mostly, and now my van is like mixed in with a mortgage and stuff, so it's not so hard to make that monthly payment.
Yeah, you mix it. I get it, and it's cool. When you got the Weird Al Yankovic gift, because you worked with him before, I was so happy. After all you've been through and all the stressful you got to finally have something that is way more stable. And yeah, and I'm sure it's such overwhelming to work with him and seeing as an artist grow up too. But I never ask you, you know, musically, like, you have such a talent. Did your parents influence you in any way? Were they musician, or it really came like from you?
Uh, Actually, yeah, my parents forced me to take piano lessons when I was a kid, and I hated it. And I remember like bashing my head on the, being like, "You just have to practice for 1 hour." And I remember sitting with my forehead on the, like they made me sit in the piano and like just hitting my head on the keys, going, "I don't want to play the piano." And like at 10 o'clock at night, finally they're like, "Okay, just go to bed." Um, and then, yeah, that was kind of. I think I took piano for like 3 years or so, and then I like convinced them to let me switch to guitar, but they made me do a classical guitar, which I hated. But I did that for about a year, and then finally I convinced them to let me buy an electric guitar, and then that was like as soon as I had an electric guitar, I was basically starting to play music with the guys that became Scared Straight, and so yeah, I mean, I have to give my parents credit for being mean and making me play that piano, because I mean, I always liked music, so I listened even as a kid. I listened to like a little AM radio, and I was always a fan of music. And my dad had a my dad was in the defense contracting as his main job. He was an electronic engineer, like making inertial navigation systems for cruise missiles and things like. He worked for NASA and other companies, but
Oh,
um,
wow.
but his dad had been a sound engineer, and so my dad on the side started this little company that was film and audio and staging, and he was mostly into film. And when I was a kid, he used to film football games with real film before video was invented. And so as a kid, I went with him sometimes, and then I started filming football games. But the company eventually started doing more audio, and that's kind of how I entered into my audio world. So he was into audio because his dad had also been an engineer. I'm about to put a post up about my grandpa, and
Wow.
so my grandfather was a sound engineer because he had been in. He was a projectionist when sound was invented. When when well, they called them talkies, when they started playing music with films and having films have sound. That was the development of modern sound systems. And so my grandfather became a sound engineer, and he worked in a city auditorium, and um, he was also president of the local union, the IATSE, that was like stagehands and projectionists and sound engineers and whatnot. And so my dad, as a kid, like made mixing boards that my grandfather used at the auditorium. And when I was a little kid, I was around, I think, 11 years old. My grandpa used to bring me up, and I would run sound for these big graduations in the auditorium while he slept, because it was a city auditorium. I think it held 3,000 people. Like, it was a pretty big
Wow.
auditorium, and they had all the local high schools would go in and do graduations there. And it was, graduations are pretty boring. So he would just be asleep, and I was mixing the graduation like a 10-year-old kid, and and I enjoyed that. So because I liked audio and music and stuff, that was kind of how I started my career. And I went to UC Berkeley. Like, I thought I would become a lawyer or something, and I studied rhetoric at UC Berkeley and got a BA. But after school, my dad made me this offer to run his sound company, and I would get the profit. But I learned a good lesson. We failed to determine what amount of capital reinvestment would be pulled from the income before, and then the remainder is profit, right? So it seemed like that business never made a profit, because every time we made some money, we were always buying new speakers. We were always growing the inventory. And so anyway, I learned how to run sound and how to run a business, and also about how to negotiate deals with your kids to get them to work for you for free.
Yeah, I'm working on that. That's why we did another one at 40s for the working. But
Yeah.
I studied cinema. It's so interesting. I don't remember exactly the years, you know, they put sound. maybe 1930, something like that. But it's crazy. It changed everything. And a lot of actors with that beautiful face, but really bad voice got like just, it was dead. Their career was dead after that. It was a huge change. It's cool that your father was part of that. Your
Yeah,
pet,
yeah,
sorry.
yeah. It's really interesting, and as much as I've always thought that I would do something else with my life, I have just kept coming back to sound because, like at one point, I thought I would become a lawyer, and I even was studying for the LSAT. But the more I looked at the test to get into law school, but the more I looked at like the kind of lawyer jobs there were, the ones that I thought looked interesting were the ones that didn't pay anything or were like paid less than I was already making as a sound engineer. And I figured the difference would be something like, at the time I thought it'd be like $500,000, because if I spent $300,000 to go to school and then lost $200,000 worth of income from working, like that's a lot of money. And what if I hated it? And I think it was the right choice, because not long after that decision, I started working for Prince, and that really so my whole audio career took a boost, and went that direction, and I love it. Honestly, I like doing it, and I still have questions about what my life would have been like if I did something that was in some different field, but but every time I've tried to get away from it, I kind of miss the excitement that I feel when I'm working with audio. So I've just kind of embraced it as like, well, this is what I do, and I'm good at this. I might as well keep doing it.
So Prince would have never have sound that good live if you were alive.
I don't know. I think Prince had a hard time working with people who were great sound engineers because of
Oh,
he didn't like when people had a big ego. So Prince liked me because I was humble, and I say that from things that other people in his band told me that he said about me. Like one time, I guess he was playing some recording that I had made in the room they were in. We had done a video and a recording, and he was playing it back while the band was watching the video, so he could criticize their performances. And I guess at one point he stood up and he said, "Man, I finally found a sound engineer who doesn't have a huge ego, who's great." So basically, he was saying, that he liked what I did, but he could get along with me, and that's a big deal. Like being able to get along with somebody who also does, because he was, he had a lot of demands. It was very hard. He expected someone who was great, but then he didn't treat them like they were great. Someone who really knew they were a great sound engineer wasn't going to put up with the kind of stuff he would put them through.
but I get it. You want people that had still something to learn, not thinking you learn everything. And I think it's really interesting. And I'm sure it was like Queens, like there's one diva in the room, it's me.
Yeah. Well, and also like he had started some weird arguments with me about things that like I thought he was wrong about technically. And I could see that if it was somebody with more of an ego, they would react differently. And I would kind of like scratch my head, but I was just kind of like, well, if that's, because he'd be like, well, I read this book that said feedback is caused by da da da, and I was just kind of like, okay, I'm not going to argue with the boss. But
and
I still would just do my best, and whatever he wanted to do, I tried to help him achieve his vision without, with and still have him have a good time, because he wanted to have a good time and put on a party, but also to sound great. Oh, you're frozen. Do you still
oh,
hear me?
we're still there.
Okay.
If you compare Prince with Weird Al Yankovic, is it more pressure? Is it the same pressure, or is just different pressure, but it's still the same level of pressure? Because it's still a huge show, and I'm sure, I'm knowing you, you don't want to fuck it up.
Yeah. Um, well, Weird Al is a demanding artist in the sense that sometimes we record the show and he has very specific notes about, oh, on this song I want this part to be louder, or this He has very specific ideas of what he wants, but he also recognizes that I do it. Like, in fact, one of his comments was like, "You take direction, very well. You're really good at listening and doing what I tell you to do." And that's a big part of it. Like, we're in the service industry. Like, I'm providing a service for him. One thing that's tricky about the Weird Al show is that almost all the shows are in a theater where someone has assigned seating, and it's very difficult to make the sound even in the whole room. Like for example, last night some of these seats were right in front of these subwoofers, and so I asked the house to provide extra speakers that they wouldn't normally put out. These monitor speakers, I brought them out and put them by the subwoofers and pointed them at these seats, because some people in the seat where they were at, all they were going to hear was bass. And so I work really hard to try to get it that every seat in the venue can hear the vocals and has a good experience. And it's just different. I mean, I think the main difference between Al and Prince that makes it challenging was Al's a bit more predictable. Like, he has a set list, he has plans, and he's kind of more reasonable about how we're going to do things. Whereas Prince at any given time could just change something drastically. Like at one Prince show, for example, after sound check, he said, "Oh, I decided the stage will look better if Morris, the keyboard player, is out by you." So the keyboard player, it wasn't a big show. It was in a rock club. I think it was the Roxy in Hollywood, or the Whiskey. It was either the Whiskey or the Roxy. But all of a sudden I had, after sound check, had the keyboard player right next to me. And then I had to give him a monitor because, he would hear the house sound too loud and delayed a little bit. By the time the sound got to him, it was already late to play keyboards, And so he had his monitor blaring loud so he could hear the time of what to do. And I was trying to mix the house with this keyboard's monitor in my ear blaring loud. So, and that was without even a sound check. That was after we had already done the sound check. There was no chance to like kind of tweak it or work on it. It was just, he was going to be there. And that was an aesthetics decision based on how the stage would look, because he had dancers on the stage. So he wanted the dancers to not have a keyboard player. For some reason, he still had the bass and drums, but he decided he didn't want Morris's big keyboard set up there. And so we just did it, and that was, so that was volatile. Like, he might do something like that. That's a pretty big change without time to work on it. And you just got to deal with it. And if something goes wrong in the show, you might get a phone call at 4 or 5 in the morning, because also I recorded all the shows. And so he would listen back to the recordings and then give me notes about it. So if something went wrong because of a decision that he made that I didn't have time to sound check, it still was my fault. So that was a different kind of nervous pressure.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's not everybody who can handle that, like you said. But it's amazing because that and it's beautiful, and it's sad what happened. But did you saw like the video? Pearl Jam finished their set. It was on Tuesday, Thursday, and they did like Purple Rain at the end, and it was very well done.
Oh, I heard about it, but no, I haven't seen it. Did I mention I'm working 15 hours a day and then sleeping on a bus
Yeah.
while we drive to the next city? There hasn't been a whole lot of time to watch videos, but yeah, I heard that. It sounded interesting. I should say, like, I really enjoyed the challenges of working with Prince. And another kind of challenge that would happen is you thought you were done working, and then all of a sudden a film crew arrives, and you work through the night, and then you drive to Las Vegas and do a show the next day that you weren't planning on doing. Like those kind of things happen. Like, you don't get any sleep. But I'll say that, like, it was exciting. And even after I stopped working with him for years, I carried around my notes and kept some gear specifically because I knew that I was going to get called to come back and work with him again, because he had a very short list of people who had successfully worked with him. And so even when I was off the team, I kind of was prepared. And of course, when he passed away, I was sad that was the end of the chances. And I did get one call to come back and work with him that I had to decline because it was on Oscars night, and I was already doing the Governor's Ball, which is the main Oscars party right up in the same building as the Oscars, and you had to have a security clearance like done a month ahead of time. So even though I would have liked to work for Prince, like after the Oscars party, like to run over there, the sound company couldn't find somebody to replace me because no one could get that security clearance to be in the Kodak Theater building where the Oscars are. It's a big deal. Like there, you know, when you drive your car into that building, they're like looking at under it with bomb detectors and all kinds of stuff. Like and so you couldn't just swap out somebody on your team. You had to have early clearance. But so when he passed, that was really sad, both because he passed away, but also for myself, because I always thought we would, you know, have another chance to work together. So that was hard.
Wow, it's amazing stories, you know. Do you felt sometimes like the Oscar, like being in the same building, just like, wow, man, I'm here. I'm like,
Yeah, those were some gnarly ones. And but I should limit it a little bit so that we have something to talk about when I do the acoustic backyard gigs, because that's part of kind of what I do during that is like I let people ask questions and just kind of chat about things like that. And sometimes people want to talk about Prince stories or other artists I've worked with. I've done a lot of Jimmy Eat World shows, and I've been on tour with the AFI. I've done some shows for Beck and who else? Ryan Adams, um,
wow.
Weird Al Yankovic, Return to Forever for people who like jazz. I've done. I did a summer of touring with Return to Forever. Um, so, but I have a lot of little stories, and like you know, growing up Mormon. I'm the oldest of 10 kids. Um, I I was a captain of my wrestling team. I was the MVP wrestler in high school, so I wrestled. Um, I rode motorcycles a lot, like not well, but I had a lot of crashes. So, so I have a lot of stuff to talk about. Like in case we're doing an acoustic show and people get tired of hearing the songs, we could just chat for a while, and I enjoy that. But I kind of imagine the acoustic shows, the acoustic parties, as being kind of like a mix of kind of like Henry Rollins meets Johnny Cash, to be able to just talk and tell stories and, like you said, have a unique time, because every time is different. I'm not reading a script. I'm just talking. So whatever people want to talk about, I can try to throw in my 2 cents.
I would like to write all that down. Like, okay, next interview we're gonna go in that direction. There's so much to talk about every time. But the album Winning is gonna be released on October 14th. The artwork is amazing, and people go grab it on People of Punk Rock vinyl. There's cassettes. If there's a lot of people don't have a huge budget, there's cassette, there's CDs, whatever you can. There's shirts. And if you're in Canada, it's cheap shipping because it's from Quebec. So, and if you're outside Canada and you want to help and you want to buy, don't worry, they ship everywhere.
Nice. Well, thank you. And there are already singles out, so you can find them at 10footpole.com. And I'm pretty excited about it. So far, people seem to like the song, so I'm really excited about it, and hope we can build up and come out on tour next year.
Congratulations, you deserve it. Dennis, before we leave, it's our 14th anniversary. If you want to wish 14th anniversary birthday to Prescription Punk Rock, go.
Happy anniversary, Prescription Punk Rock. 14 years is a long time. And thank you so much for supporting the punk scene and helping to build such a strong um, excitement about punk rock in Quebec. And it's made Quebec one of the hot spots in the world. And I'm so grateful that you're a part of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. Thank you. I remember I wrote you on MySpace more than 14 years ago, and you directly answered me. And since then, thank you for the friendship, man. The kids
Oh,
in me
nice.
cannot believe that one day I could be friend with you. But thank you for your friendship, your integrity, your talent. We wait for you in Quebec. Have fun with Weird Al Yankovic. People go see the movie. You had the chance to see it. It looked amazing.
It's really good. I don't think you'll be disappointed. I can't say anything about it. I don't want to leak anything, but Daniel Radcliffe, you know, he's really good, and there's so many other stars in it. It's fun to watch and well written, and it's worth going to, or worth seeing when you get that chance.
And if you check really good the trailer, you see Weird Al Yank playing a role, a cameo. And it's funny because he never took himself so seriously. I'm watching with the 19-month kids the Aquabat show, and he did some cameo on the Aquabat show, and I was like, man, that's amazing. Like he don't care. Like it's small budget. I'm gonna be there, and it's amazing. He's like, it's so cool that you work with him. Can't wait to see you around Quebec, and thank you, Dennis.
Oh, thank you, Eric. Well, take care. Hope to see you soon. I'm excited about it too. Take care.
Thank you. Take care.
Okay, bye bye.
Bye.
Merci.